Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Infinite Podcast. I'm here with my co-host Simon, and today we're diving into the twists and turns of immigration policy through history. It's a global tale of borders shifting with public mood. And let me say, those laws from way back, totally different world compared to the tight borders and heated debates we see now. Simon, kick us off, will you?
Oh, absolutely, Joe. Man, immigration back in the day was like showing up to a potluck and everyone's invited, no dish required. Now, you better bring a five-course meal and your grandmother's silverware just to get through the door.
And let's not forget, societies were super fluid with movement way back. But jump to the 19th and 20th centuries, you've got the US with the Chinese Exclusion Act, Britain's tightened borders post-WWI, and today, places like Fortress Europe. Policies evolved with economic needs and fear of the other. Borders drew lines not just on maps, but in attitudes. It's never just been about migration. It's reflecting values of eras.
Yeah, Joe, and those values are like clothes from past decades, some better left in the closet, if you ask me. I mean, sure, security's a thing, but sometimes it looks like we're less about protecting and more about isolating. And economic needs? That's rich, considering how much nations have built on the backs of immigrants. Seems like the welcome sign comes with fine print these days.
Totally. The welcome mat's got conditions now. We've swung from open doors to building walls, forgetting who laid the bricks for those walls in the first place. It's a pendulum, and right now it's swung far from open arms.
So, with this pendulum you're talking about, do you think there's ever going to be a swing back to open arms, or are we looking at tighter borders for the long haul?
Simon, that's the million-dollar question. It hits a nerve, right? I wish I believed we'd see open arms across the board soon, but the world's complex. Fears, politics, resources. Until those raw spots heal, countries will guard those gates tight. We might see it ease up in parts, case by case, but a free-for-all? That feels like wishful thinking today.
Wishful thinking? Maybe. But come on, Joe, history's this wild roller coaster, not a straight line. It's like that game where you spin the globe and your finger lands on who's going to open doors next. Just take some big event or a bold leader, and suddenly the fences are down, or at least they've got a gate.
For those just tuning in, Simon and I have been unpacking the ebb and flow of immigration policy. It's like the fashion changes through history. Sometimes everyone's welcome to the party, other times it's an exclusive invite-only deal. We've gone from open-door policies to today's serious vetting process. Key takeaway? Immigration laws reflect the heartbeat of society at any given time. Feels kind of like we're seeing more walls than bridges these days.
Funny story, my granddad, classic character, he rocked up to Ellis Island back in the day. Picture this, one small suitcase, less English than I have hair, which isn't saying much, and a pocket full of dreams. He'd laugh, telling us about his first taste of American pie, not the dessert, but that sweet, sweet opportunity. Nowadays, Granddad would be facing way more forms than hopes, I'll tell you that.
Funny thing, Simon, I had this neighbor growing up, old Mrs. Petrova. She snuck out from behind the Iron Curtain with nothing but folklore in her heart and a beat-up violin. Nightly, she'd play melodies that whisked us away to her homeland. Now, what gets me is back then, it was all about breaking free, finding liberty. In her time, making it here was the climax of a gritty survival story. Today's script, though, demands endless paperwork for that same shot at freedom. Times changed, stories echoed, but the pursuit, that's timeless.
Liberty, Schmeiberty Joe. Mrs. Petrova and my granddad hit the jackpot, just dodging red tape. You ever try reading modern immigration forms? It's like they're written in code. And don't get me started on the wait times. Feels like you could age a decade waiting for a green light. Sure, paperwork's part of the deal, but if the land of opportunity is now the land of wait your turn, those old-timers would be playing the world's saddest violin duet.
I'll never forget Simon. A friend of mine emigrated here right after high school. Spunky kid with dreams big enough to fill the Grand Canyon. Took the plunge, picture that scene at the consulate, hand shaking, form in hand. Now, his uncle had this saying, life's a dance, you learn as you go, right? So he gets to the interview, ready for the tango, and it turns out they want a waltz. knocks him sideways but doesn't knock him out. Hulu hoops through paperwork and finally lands stateside. His tale? Like a modern-day epic poem, Man versus the Red Tape Monster. But let me tell you, it's worth pondering. If making a home in the land of opportunity becomes a Herculean trial, are we honoring those ideals our ancestors sailed towards? It makes you wonder, where's the line between safeguarding our society and throttling the very spirit of opportunity and hope that built this place?
Oh boy, Joe. That's the crux of it, isn't it? Protecting what we've built without forgetting why we built it in the first place. Society's tightrope walk. Pretty dizzying, if you ask me.
Absolutely, Simon. If we dabble in history for a sec, let's remember the U.S. wasn't always so sticky with letting folks in. Think Ellis Island, early 1900s. Masses of hopeful faces streamed through, recognizing Lady Liberty as an actual symbol of freedom. Fast forward to post-World War II, you've got new ideologies and fear taking root, giving birth to policies like the 1952 Immigration and Nationality Act, playing gatekeeper based on skills and country caps. Then there's the shift in '65 under LBJ, abolishing quotas based on national origins, swinging that pendulum back towards inclusivity, but still with limitations. By the time we roll into the '80s and '90s, though, it's about clamping down again, with laws ramping up deportations and enforcement. Today, it's all about finding balance in the chaos of a hyper-connected world, mixing precaution with the very essence of the American dream.
Oh, balance. If this is balance, Joe, I'm a flamingo on a beach ball. Look at the histories. Sure, they opened the gates, slapped them shut again. It's like bouncers at a club deciding who's cool enough to join the party. Those earlier policies? I'm thinking we put the nation in imagination, dreaming up an equal opportunity land that's more myth than Monday morning. Even with good intentions, policies seem to have made in fear stamped right on them. And let's not even start on the mixed messages we send to the world. Give us your tired, but, only if they can code.
Bang on, Simon. The narrative evolves like boxers in a ring, sometimes landing punches for progress, other times ducking back into protectionism. We've rocked between compassion and caution, each era writing its own chapter on who gets to chase the so-called American dream. Remember, though, past policies weren't all gold. There's been exclusion, quotas, even xenophobia disguised as patriotism. These days we talk melting pot, but stir that soup with an overly cautious spoon. What once was a golden door now seems layered with a complex security system. Fingerprints, background checks, tough criteria. Essentially, immigration policy is this ever-changing beast, rarely static, influenced by world events, politics, and public sentiment. And while history might recognize today's strict measures as short-sighted tomorrow, it's also possible we'll commend them for preserving certain values. Either way, hindsight's 2020. We won't really know until we're looking back from the future.
So, will tomorrow's kids look back at our era and laugh at how we panicked over paperwork like it was some kind of monster under the bed? Only future podcasts will tell.
Talking about looking back, Simon, it's funny how the future generations will judge us, not just on our policies, but on our humanity. That brings to mind an equally tricky tightrope we've been walking, trying to balance security with humanity in crafting fair immigration laws. How do we protect the flock, yet also tend to those seeking shelter? It's this intricate dance between moral obligations and national safety, and everyone's got an opinion.
Joe, you've got the heart on the table, but I'm throwing in $1 for some sense. Look, we toss around moral obligations like candy at a parade. Security isn't just a buzzword, it's what keeps the boat from tipping over. Sure, it'd be great to hug the world, but unchecked, that's a fairy tale. Let's not mince words. Bad apples sneak through and wreak havoc. So this dance, it's less about having the right moves and more about not stepping on a landmine. We've got to stand guard firmly, or there might not be anything left to protect.
I hear you loud and clear, Simon. There's real weight behind ensuring safety and security. It's a non-negotiable. And true, among those yearning for a new start are individuals who'd wish us harm. It's heart-wrenching, though, to see wide-eyed dreamers caught in the crossfire of our fears. It's a puzzle with no clear edges. On one hand, our instincts scream to protect at all costs, and on the other, The very fabric of our society is stitched together by diverse threads from around the globe, balancing that innate human call to open our arms while locking down potential threats. It might just be one of the greatest challenges of our era.
Absolutely, Joe. It tugs at the heartstrings, doesn't it? Hearing those stories of hope getting tangled in red tape, it's a gut punch. Every time someone with sparkling eyes hits a wall instead of open arms, something inside me crumbles. We've got to find that sweet spot where we can sleep soundly knowing we're safe, but also not turning away folks who might one day be telling their grandkids about the land of the free and home of the brave.
You've got a point about the heartstrings, Simon, but let's not get carried away on sentiment alone. We've got to mix compassion with practicality. It's delicate surgery with no room for shaky hands. Now let's be real. This isn't just about bad apples sneaking in. It's also about preserving our core values, economy, resources. Sweet spot? It's like trying to find the Loch Ness monster. Right now, the scales tip too easily towards paranoia or naivety. The deal is, we're talking human lives here, not just statistics on a spreadsheet. Each decision, each policy tweak has ripple effects that can turn into tsunamis in someone's life. Call it what you will. But if we don't have open, challenging dialogues about this, like we do right now, we risk ossifying into a society too scared of its own shadow, or one that bends until it breaks. There must be common ground where safety meets sanctuary without sacrificing the soul of our nation.
Well, Joe, let's sprinkle in some facts with that philosophical waxing. Historically, America's had its share of open-door moments and tight security eras, swinging like a pendulum from one extreme to the other. After 9/11, we tightened up, understandably. Homeland Security got launched, the Patriot Act was passed, all to put a lid on terrorism fears. We're juggling loads here. The economy needs workers, but jobs are a hot button. Resources are stretched thin as bubblegum, and culturally, it's a powder keg debate. Throw in an estimated 11 million unauthorized folks already here. Fact is, they're part of the community, whether policies acknowledge them or not. Balancing act? More like spinning plates while riding a unicycle across a tightrope over Niagara Falls, blindfolded. We've made strides in tight border management, sure, but humane treatment and comprehensive reform often feel MIA. Do policies reflect our values, cater to current demographic demands, maintain security without turning cold? That's the million-dollar question. And buddy, I don't see anyone holding the check.
Here's a twist, Simon. With all our tech advancements, from AI to biometrics, we're in the 21st century playing by 20th century rules. Maybe it's time for a radical overhaul where tech meets policy. Could be a game changer, or are we opening Pandora's box? Buckle up. It's going to be one heck of a ride.
Tech overhaul, Joe? Ha! Can't wait for the day when a friendly robot stamps my passport. But with tech, there's glitches and hackers. Imagine a blue screen of death at the border.
You're not off base about tech glitches, Simon. Imagine being stuck at customs because the robotic immigration officer can't find its keys to reboot. Yet there's untapped potential. Streamlining background checks with AI doesn't only speed things up, but might also flag issues humans miss. Tech shouldn't replace human discretion. It's about supporting the decision makers, fine-tuning the balance between open doors and strong locks. And while we introduce these innovations, safeguarding civil liberties is just as crucial. Privacy concerns aren't going anywhere. The bigger picture, it all circles back to that million-dollar question. How do we ensure these systems serve our humanity, not strip it away?
Tech's cool, Joe, but let's not trade touch for tech. Humanity and policy, always. Can't shove ethics in the cloud.
Absolutely, tech can dial up efficiency, but it should never dial down empathy. Ethics can't be coded, they're lived, felt, part of our DNA, not the clouds. But here's a curveball. What if tech could actually enhance fairness, make security with humanity more than a slogan? Picture AI devoid of human bias, meticulously sifting through legions of applications or sniffing out fair solutions that might otherwise get buried in bureaucracy. Yet, let's pump those brakes. Machines lack the shades of gray we humans paint our world in. So while we chase innovation, we've got to keep a tight grip on what makes us human. Our capacity to understand context and extend kindness even when the algorithms say no. Tech is our tool, not our replacement. That's key to keeping anything fair.
You think we could really trust algorithms to make decisions about people's lives without some kind of bias sneaking in?
Not a chance, Simon. Every algorithm's written by people who've got their own views and blind spots. We risk baking those biases right into the system. Using tech? Sure. Trusting it blindly? That's where we'd fumble.
Blind trust in tech is like walking on ice and pretending it's concrete, Joe. Bad idea. We gotta stay sharp. Keeping humans in the loop isn't just smart, it's non-negotiable. Tech should be in the passenger seat, with people driving the car, especially when dealing with something as messy and real as human lives. But hey, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Adopting new tech carefully could cut down on endless red tape, give us time for cases that really need a human heart. Just a thought. Now, while we're wrestling with fairness, insecurity, and humanity, should rich countries take more responsibility for global migration caused by their own actions, like climate change?
Absolutely, Simon. As you said, tech should assist, not drive decisions about people's futures. It's there to expedite processes, not embody them. When we talk about fairness and security, the human touch is irreplaceable. It's about using tech as a scalpel, not a sledgehammer, precision over brute force. Now, about rich countries' responsibility, they absolutely have a role in addressing causes of migration. Policies created behind closed doors in comfort can still create storms abroad in form of economic hardship or environmental impact. There should be an acknowledgement of these ripples, perhaps even compensatory pathways to address the displacement they cause.
Spot on, Joe. The choices we make here ripple across oceans, acknowledging that maybe we can craft policies with compassion as much as caution. How fairness plays into that, well, that's a conversation that's just revving up.
Shifting gears a bit, Simon, while we're on the topic of borders and policy, there's always that lighter side. Ever heard those wild stories about border blunders or folks navigating red tape with some outlandish ingenuity? Those are gold, comedy wrapped in cautionary tales.
Oh, Joe, let me tell you about my buddy Donnie. He lived right where the US-Canada border sliced through his farm. The border was so oddly set up that some of his cows would chew grass in Canada while others mooed in the States. One day, officials decide to run a fence across it. Chaos. These cows became international travelers, mooing with confusion. Donnie's solution? He sets up a mini cow passport office as a joke. This makeshift booth had the guards in splits. They never built that fence. Guess they didn't want to deal with bovine border control. Talk about outsmarting red tape with a bit of humor, huh?
Hilarious. His cow passport office is the type of border humor we need. All right, what about the officials who get red-faced when social media takes these stories and runs wild? Imagine tweets about Canadian cows seeking U.S. greener pastures going viral. Satire writes itself. It's not just comedy, though. These moments shine a light on how absurd things can get. So while folks online chuckle and share, they're also poking at deeper issues. Border policies affect lives, livelihoods, even livestock. Here's a thought. On the next slip-up that goes viral, let's not just laugh, but ask why it happened and what sensible fix we missed amidst the giggles.
Oh, absolutely, Joe. It's one thing to chuckle at memes. Who doesn't love a good laugh? But you're right. Behind every Lol is a real issue someone's living through. A farmer's livelihood can hang on these policies made by folks who've never set foot on a farm. And when mishaps go viral, it's like the internet holds up a big ol' mirror, showing us the messy, human side of policy. We ought to remember that with every shared laugh, there's also an opportunity for a shared lesson. Let's use those viral stories not just for the ha-ha, but the aha moment to make things better.
Yeah, Simon, the internet's this massive highlight reel, puts the spotlight on what's broken in a way that's impossible to ignore. Like you suddenly have thousands of voices chiming in from all over the place, calling out the nonsense. It's powerful because it's collective, man. Memes are like the people's microphone now, and when something's off, they blast it loud. We've got to harness that, turn those laughs into change.
Joe, you're spot on about the internet being the world's megaphone. But let's not forget, it can amplify facts and fiction equally. One minute everyone's a policy expert because they read a tweet. Next thing we know, we've got beefed up laws over a photoshopped pic of a cow in sunglasses at customs. Sure, you gotta love how a meme can move mountains, or at least paperwork. But at the end of the day, we need more than retweets and reactions to shape sound policy. It's great that we expose flaws through humor, but let's not get so caught up in the noise that we leave all the doing to someone else. Social media is the starting line, not the finish.
Hey, new listeners. You're diving into Infinite Podcast mid-chat about the absurdity and humor of border policies going a bit wonky. We've been yarn spinning about cows with more passport stamps than most people, all thanks to the US-Canada border cutting through a farm. Picture it, a cow passport office, as a joke that actually stops a fence construction. We've also chewed over how social media turns policy slip-ups into global gags. It's about chuckles turned catalysts, bringing real issues to light with a side of memes. Remember though, those LOLs and aha moments should lead to action, not just fleet-footed finger taps. Stick around for more straight talk with a funny bone. Chill vibes only.
That's right. While it's all good having a laugh at these ridiculous moments, we've got to dig a bit deeper too. See, when an innocent mix-up on the border becomes a hashtag sensation overnight, it's not just about getting retweets. It's a light bulb moment. Like, hey, maybe there's something off in our border policies if cows are getting more attention from immigration than people. It's funny until you realize we need serious tweaks, not just a quick fix or crossing fingers hoping it won't happen again. So let's make those viral laughs count for something, huh? Keep it rolling, but look closely at what we're actually lolling at. It could be something worth fixing for real.
For sure, Simon. The humor's not just in the mishap, it's in the mirror it holds up to the system. Every viral border misadventure lays bare a real gap in how policies work, or don't. So it's on us, the chuckling audience, to push for meaningful change once the laughter fades. Let's not be content with just sharing memes. Let's share responsibility to improve things. Those retweets, they should be reminders that we've got some patching up to do, making those borders make sense for everyone, not just comedic content.
You're nailing it, Joe. So let me toss this your way. How do we turn those retweets and viral moments into real conversations that actually get the ball rolling on policy reform? What's step one for turning online chuckles into offline action steps?
Simon, step one, we got to get beyond the echo chambers. Online, it's easy to clap back with a like-minded crowd. Nice for likes, not so great for change. What if we demanded that viral moments become town hall topics? Let's stop expecting keyboard warriors to do it all. It's on us to poke our local leaders and say, hey, did you see that cow passport joke? Cute, but let's talk real policy. It's about leveraging laughs into legit conversations, pushing public figures and policymakers out of comfort zones. Memes as meeting agendas. Anyone? Let social media be the nudge that gets someone in charge to stop scrolling and start steering talks towards tangible solutions.
You've just hit a grand slam, Joe. If we can channel all that meme energy into making policy pros sweat the small stuff, then hey, maybe we'll see some solid change happen. So folks, keep sharing, but also start caring beyond the screen. Got a wacky border story of your own or thoughts on turning viral laughs into real-world fixes? Let's hear it, because sometimes the best solutions come from the most unexpected places. What's your take? Let's hash it out.
You know, Simon, reflecting on the humor and humanity of border issues, it's complex. It segues into a meatier dialogue about global migration's future. Let's sink our teeth into that, like understanding the asylum-seeking process, which, no joke, can be as intricate as a cow navigating customs. Immigrant integration doesn't always get the limelight either, yet it's critical to the narrative. And with today's geopolitical climate, it feels like the stakes keep getting higher for immigration laws. How nations are penciling in the pathways or sketching out walls right now, that could redraw maps in more ways than one.
Man, asylum seeking is a marathon with too many hurdles. But get this, some places make you wait years while figuring if you get to stay or not. That's years in limbo. Ridiculous when someone genuinely needs refuge. And integration? Let's chat about some countries rolling out the welcome wagon only to hit immigrants with a cultural quiz harder than any game show I've seen. It's like, What's the capital of Obscureville? And can you bake the national cake? With the world's vibe nowadays, it feels like more folks are for building walls, but maybe they're missing the big picture. Walls might seem like an easy fix, but history scribbles all over that idea in permanent marker. What happens when the next-door nation's chaos spills over despite your fancy wall? So yeah, let's figure out smoother pathways for people needing a new home base instead of slamming doors and hoping everything just chills out on its own.
Absolutely, the weight is crippling and cultural quizzes are absurd. As for walls, they're often just band-aids on bullet wounds. Real solutions lie in effective, compassionate immigration policies, not concrete slabs and isolationist daydreams.
Concrete slabs and isolationist daydreams are like putting duct tape on a dam, not the smartest long-term strategy. Proper immigration policy needs to be about bridges, not barriers. Think of it, community programs that connect new arrivals with locals, language support, job training, stuff that really gears everyone up for success. Now, let's crank up that crystal ball and take a wild swing at the future. With the global stage getting all sorts of shakes from conflicts, climate change, you name it, we could be looking at an even bigger shuffle of folks around the globe. The question is, will we draw lines in the sand or lay out welcome mats and make the most of what every person brings to the table? I'm all in for laying out those mats.
Laying out welcome mats instead of drawing lines, right on. Investing in integration shows we're future-proofing our societies, because let's face it, the shuffle isn't stopping. If we craft policies that see immigrants as assets to community tapestries rather than intruders, that's a game changer. Facing an uptick in global reshuffling due to endless variables, opting for inclusivity could be our best play. It positions us to thrive in diversity rather than just surviving the tide of change. Our move is turning challenge into opportunity, transforming our neighborhoods from mere spaces to shared places with stories and successes from all over the map.
Oh, totally. But let's hit the brakes for a sec and play devil's advocate. While we're rolling out those welcome mats, there's got to be a balance, right? Open arms are great, but we shouldn't have blinders on either. Think about it. Every newcomer has something ace to bring to the party, sure, but some can crash it too. So how do we keep the tunes thumping with fresh global beats without letting the neighbors call the cops? Let's say we beef up background checks or dial in criteria for who really needs asylum versus who's just looking to jump the queue. It sounds tough, but think about it. Cracking the code on that helps everybody settle in smoother. So weaving everyone into the community quilt, that's sweet, but only if we're picky with our patchwork. Otherwise, it's a hot mess just waiting to unravel.
I'm with you on discerning who gets a spot at the party. But Simon, circling back to your point about balance, how do we get it right? How do we fine-tune that background check playlist so it's fair yet firm, making sure we're opening doors to those in genuine need while keeping the integrity of the process intact?
You're talking sense, Joe. So where do we draw the line on which tunes make it to the playlist? Like, how can we keep that delicate balance between a fair shake for genuine seekers and upholding the process without bumming out the whole vibe with red tape?
It's all in the mix, Simon. Clear, just criteria for asylum and streamlined systems that avoid backlogs while respecting everyone's dignity. It's a tough gig, but doable with the right focus.
You hit the nail, Joe. Having clear-cut rules for asylum that everyone understands, that's key. Like having a cheat sheet, so when someone's in a tight spot, they know the dance steps. And speed is essential. Twiddling thumbs while papers collect dust isn't helping anyone. But also, let's hammer in some accountability, making sure the system's fair from the get-go. A little common sense sprinkled with compassion, with that recipe, we can bake a better future for all, where walls become outdated and pathways are where it's at. Real talk, there's room to grow, but it starts with those first smart steps.
Sure, cheat sheets and quick steps sound ideal, but let's grill this idea. If everyone gets a handbook on asylum do's and don'ts, are we potentially opening the door to more savvy line skippers who game the system? Plus, speed is one thing. Thoroughness can't take the back seat. And about that accountability, who's checking the checkers? I'm all for compassion, mate. But when Lady Justice plays it too fast and loose, the whole system might end up less fair than a rigged carnival game. Could be controversial, but what if truly impartial AI stepped in to handle initial screenings? Room to grow is an understatement. We need groundbreaking shifts in our approach, reality checks with our ideals. It's not just pathways or walls. It's about crafting the GPS for those paths.
You're onto something with the AI, Joe. Let tech take the wheel for a bit on grunt work. Maybe we dodge some bias and speed up the snooze fest of paper shuffling. Tough not to imagine robo-referees keeping things fair without favoring left or right. Now there's food for thought, mixing silicon with our paperwork salad to get a fairer system that nails down who really needs help getting over the wall or through the door. But hey, listeners, what do you reckon? Is AI as immigration gatekeeper genius or just another glitch waiting to happen? We're setting the table for this feast of ideas. Grab your fork and let's dig in deeper.
Speaking of blending systems for better outcomes, let's chop into the fusion taking place on a tastier front: food. Border proximity isn't just about politics. It's a recipe for some amazing culinary mashups. Ever bite into a dish where you can't tell where one country's flavor ends and another begins? Think about the USA-Mexico border munchies. Tacos and burgers morphing into something outrageously good. Or head east, where European borders are like kitchen lines that chefs just waltz over, creating mouth-watering hybrids as they go. Now the big question: is this creative culinary combo platter enhancing our dining experience, or is it turning kitchens into labs where authentic recipes lose their roots? What do you think, Simon? Are we dining in delight with these fusions, or just stirring a melting pot of confusion?
Oh, when you venture down to the Texas-Louisiana border, Joe, there's this mind-bending mashup called Tex-Mex Cajun. We're talking spices that could jumpstart a truck meeting flavors as rich as an oil baron, shrimp gumbo with a side of jalapeno cornbread. Anyone? And then zip over to Asia. Thailand and Malaysia share more than a border. They pass recipes back and forth like secret notes in class, right? Tom Yum goes rendang. It's lime leaves shaking hands with lemongrass under a coconut milk rainbow. But wait, when folks think sushi, they think Japan, pristine and perfected. Then you've got California rolling up and sticking avocado in there. Some purists shake their heads, while others are on board faster than you can say wasabi. It stirs up a tasty debate, man. Are we trailblazing new flavor highways, or just blurring the lines so much that Grandma's classic dish is getting lost in the pot?
Well, Simon, while we savor these bold new bites, let's not forget, is Grandma's classic dish becoming a culinary unicorn because we can't resist tossing in a twist?
Absolutely. The classics are taking hits left and right. Look, I'm all for a dash of daring in the kitchen, but when Grandma's stew gets a kale makeover because it's trendy, something's off. Picture sitting down to what you think will be an authentic meal, and bam, it's got a modern twist that's snuck up on you like a ninja, a fusion ninja. Sure, it might taste great, but sometimes you just want that old school flavor, you know? So when we talk fusion, I guess there's a thin line between a fist bump and a punch in the taste buds. Are we creating masterpieces or just stirring up nostalgia for dishes that actually tasted like home? It's the gourmet tightrope walk of our times, pal.
Hey, new listeners, you're tuning into a zesty chat about food fusion. We've been slicing and dicing whether border blending in the kitchen is stirring up culinary magic or just creating flavor chaos. Tex-Mex Cajun delights, Asian cuisine crossovers, even sushi getting the Californian twist. We're chewing over if this blending of bites is a taste bud bonanza or if it's putting classic dishes on the endangered list. Got opinions? Serve 'em up.
All right, Joe. So where do you land on this? Are we whipping up a global gourmet utopia with these fusions, or is there a little voice in your head crying out for some good old-fashioned authenticity at the dinner table?
I'm going to stir the pot here, Simon. As much as fusion spices things up, I think it can also dilute. Sure, it's thrilling to taste a flavor combo you've never imagined, but at what cost? When we're so busy chasing the novel, we risk leaving behind the authentic tastes that tell a story, a culture's culinary DNA. Sometimes I crave the real deal, that undiluted, time-tested tradition on a plate. It's about preserving history and identity, not just chasing the next food trend. Fusion is cool, but let's not let our hunger for innovation eat away at the roots of our food heritage.
Man, Joe, you're right. And hey, remember when tacos met pizza and everyone lost their minds? I was like, slow your roll, guys. This ain't Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles grub. You can't just toss Italian and Mexican in a blender and expect a Michelin star. What's next? Spaghetti burritos? Imagine that blind date. Hey, spaghetti, meet tortilla. Y'all got nothing in common, but make it work. It's like we're playing Cupid with the menu.
Hey, if you're just tuning in, you've landed on the flavor battleground. We're talking the tasty tango of food fusion, when culinary worlds collide at border towns and beyond. It's Joe and Simon cooking up a storm of thoughts. From Tex-Mex Cajun spice fests to sushi getting cozy with avocados, we're debating. Is this mixing of menus leading us to a delicious dining utopia, or are we muddying the waters of authentic eats? Is it a full-on gourmet evolution or a recipe for confusion? Join the feast of opinions. Let's dish it out together.
Joe, let me throw a wrench in the works. Imagine for a second, no fusion food. You'd wave goodbye to chili chocolate, pineapple pizza, cronuts. Sound like a world you want to live in? I mean, sometimes fusion is like your favorite band's surprise album. Could be genius, could flop, but you've got to respect the risk. Now, don't get me wrong. Authenticity is like that cozy blanket on a cold night. It's home. But when that blanket turns into a superhero cape with a dash of the unexpected, that's where dining gets adventurous, like culinary jazz or something. And I'll tell you, there are folks out there who'd trade grandma's recipe for one dinner at a place where the menu reads like a UN summit. It ain't confusion. It's an all-out flavor party.
No fusion would certainly strip down the variety, but let's chew on this. Not all unexpected combos hit the high notes. Out there is a balance between culinary daredevil stunts and keeping it real, the secret ingredient to not losing the plot. Sure, some fusion is like that hit single you never saw coming, yet sometimes too much experimentation cranks up the volume until you can't hear the melody anymore. Do we want a playlist of bold new tracks, or do we also need those timeless classics? Let's jam about that.
Joe, you've hit the bullseye. It's all about that sweet spot, the fusion high wire act, where every step can either wow the crowd or send a chef tumbling. Balance isn't just for flavor, but for honoring the old school while cheering on the new. So let's serving up our listeners with this question. How do we keep strumming the right chords, making sure our culinary playlist is a banger without skipping those timeless classics? Where's your taste taking you, friends? Old school classics, wild fusion remixes, or somewhere in between?
Simon, all this talk about fusion food and mixing cultures on our plates has me thinking about where this all began, not just in the kitchen, but in the very foundation of how we exchange with each other. I'm talking about trade, the original cross-border mashup that really set the stage for everything, from those historic bazaars where they'd haggle over spices to today's mammoth economic partnerships. It's the art of bargaining that brought us sushi pizza and more. So let's swap the spoon for some insights and dish out thoughts on the history of trade and its grand bazaar beginnings. How have these ancient marketplaces and trading traditions shaped our modern world? And what can we learn from those times when two sides came together, looking to barter their way to prosperity? Let's dive into this historical marketplace and see what's up for trade.
Oh, the old school bazaar hustle. Makes you think of trading silk for salt and spices for silver. But here's a head scratcher. Aren't today's borders like checkout lines compared to those boisterous trade fairs? Now it's just tap your card and call it a day. Consider how back in the day, haggling was practically an art form. You'd go tit for tat over a rug like you were drafting peace treaties. Modern negotiations just don't have that barter banter, you know? Also, when did bargaining become such a corporate chess game? It used to be, you could swing by, offer up your best goat, shake on it, and bam, you've got yourself a couple of chickens. But now, try swapping your office chair for a coworker's desk plant and watch HR throw a fit. I reckon we could learn something from history, like making deals more personal and less about the bottom line. What happened to trading stories, not just stock options? Let's put some soul back into the swap. Man,
Ah, Simon, imagine if modern trades had the same flair as old bazaar barter. CEOs tossing in an extra percent of shares for a firm handshake and a good joke. Now that'd be a stock exchange worth watching.
imagine a CEO slapping a camel on the backside in the middle of Wall Street, shouting, "Throw in that camel and you've got yourself a deal." Ha, I'd pay top dollar just to see the chaos. Can you picture the traders' faces? Worth more than any stock spike.
Haha, now wouldn't that be a sight? Wall Street turned into a camel lot. I'd say we'd have quite the hump day. But seriously, there's something to that old bazaar spirit of deal-making. Let's not lose that humanity amidst all the digital dollars and cents.
Absolutely, Joe. Let's not forget that haggling gave a little soul to commerce. Every deal had a face, a name. It wasn't just numbers on a screen. Lost that personal touch, didn't we? The game's changed. A smile won't drop your interest rates. But, come on, are we ready for Camelots on Wall Street? Maybe not. However, what if every once in a while, CEOs got down in the trenches at local farmers markets? Haggle over apples and artisan cheese. Bring humanity back into economics, one laugh and handshake at a time.
Simon, the CEOs in the farmers markets, is a genius plan. It's grounding, remembering that at the core of every mega deal are people and their sweat equity. Put those suit and tie execs next to the earth-smelling stalls, remind them it's about more than just numbers. Let's not forget, the art of bargaining across boundaries forged our economic landscape. Every stock symbol has roots in physical trade, negotiation skills honed over fresh produce rather than fiber optics. We should honor that history. Let it infuse some soul back into our screens of sterile transactions.
So, Joe, you're saying put power suits next to potato sacks, right? How do you think today's digital deal makers would fare in the old bazaar hustle, trading not just goods but stories and laughs? Could they strike a bargain without a Bluetooth in ear?
Well, Simon, I'll play devil's advocate here. Today's bigwigs might flounder without their tech tools. They're playing a different game now. Haggling in ancient markets was about reading body language, picking up on the subtleties of speech, and gauging sincerity. Nowadays, those skills are undervalued. It's all about data, projections, the cold hard stats. Could they swap spreadsheets for spices? Maybe, but we can't scoff at today's trade tactics either. Efficiency is king in a global market where split-second decisions move millions. The bizarre banter might not cut it in our high-speed digital age.
For those just joining in, we've been jaunting down the trade memory lane, talking about how ancient bartering at markets and bazaars is like the dusty granddaddy of our digital deal-making today. We're wondering if we've lost that personal touch from the days when a firm handshake meant more than an e-signature. It's not just about cash or crypto, it's about connections. Could modern moguls hack it in the hustle of historical haggle? Tune in as we swap more than just pleasantries and ponder whether we can bring back a bit of that bargaining soul into today's trades.
You know, Simon, your question takes me back to this one time I found myself in a bustling market in Marrakech. The air was thick with the scents of cumin and mint, every stall a kaleidoscope of colors and textures. I felt like I'd walked into the pages of history. I spotted this handcrafted lamp I just had to have. So I puff up my chest, ready for a good old-fashioned haggle, right? I start throwing out my numbers, but this vendor, oh man, he was a pro. He ups the ante, not just with counteroffers, but with stories about the lamp, his family's craft. Each figure came with a narrative. In the end, I coughed up more dirhams than planned, but walked away with something priceless, a connection. And now, each time I switch on that lamp, I don't just see the glow. I hear the echo of laughter and lively barter, a reminder that sometimes what lasts isn't the deal, but the story woven around it.
Oh man, Joe, that's a great tale. I can almost smell those spices from here. But tell me, do you think if you'd gone in silent as a mouse, no haggle, just flash some cash, that lamp would hold the same charm for you now without the story that came with it?
Frankly, Simon, not everyone's into the story. There's something to be said for silent efficiency. Get in, pay the tag price, get out. No fuss. It streamlines life, cuts through the noise. And consider the introverts, for whom haggling is less cozy fireside chat and more like a gauntlet run under a scorching sun. For them, charm doesn't get cashed at the bank. So maybe that lamp without the lore behind it isn't as bewitching. But hey, it still casts the same light.
I hear you, Joe, on the different strokes for different folks. But aren't we forgetting something? That bargaining across borders isn't just theater, it's cultural exchange. The charisma of trade isn't about high or low stakes, it's the very fabric of society being woven. Not to mention, what makes history rich and spicy is these exchanges, like ingredients in a stew every culture throws into the pot. Sure, efficiency is grand, don't get me wrong, but let's not toss out those stories with the stock prices. If our markets lose that, well, isn't trading just a heartless swap meet? You gotta throw some personality in there, else why not let robots do our dealing? Maybe we're here to put the bazaars back into business. Humans keep things interesting, after all.
Spot on, Simon. It's that cultural tapestry that adds richness to the mix, turns a transaction into tradition. Sure, cold efficiency has its place, but let's not scrub away the human hues from the canvas of commerce. Where's the balance between brisk business and the bazaar's bustling charm? The question is, how do we thread that needle without unraveling the whole fabric? Now, listeners, think about this. In what ways can we infuse our fast-paced trade with a dash of old-world bartering spirit? What's your take on keeping the soul in the cell?
Talking about cross-border exchanges and the human elements in trade, you know what else has a remarkable blend of interaction and intrigue? Border crossings. It's like this whole other stage for cultural interplay, where even the most serious moments can be seasoned with humor. It takes the phrase "lost in translation" to a whole other level. How about those checkpoint chuckles, Joe? Ever been caught in a comical clash at customs or stumbled into a funny faux pas while flashing your passport? Share a tale or two. Why don't you?
Ah, Simon, I've got just the story. One time, I'm at this little border checkpoint, won't say where, but there's a bit of a language barrier. I'm trying to explain that I host a podcast, right? Now in their local language, the word I used was hilariously close to potato farmer. So here's the guard, puzzled, staring at my microphone and laptop, then bursts out laughing, asks if I'm trading tech for tubers. We ended up cracking jokes through hand signals and broken phrases. By the end of it, we're all laughing so hard, tears are rolling down our cheeks. I may have left without planting potatoes, but I surely planted a memory there. Goes to show, even a routine border check can turn into an unexpected bundle of belly laughs.
Potato farmer, huh? I can just see you now, trying to cross with a bag of spuds instead of a mic. But come on, Joe, let's pivot this tractor around for a sec. Doesn't this highlight something bigger? Like, in these high-stress spots where everything's so strict and scripted, there's still room for those genuine, unscripted human moments. Think about it. That guard will probably tell the story of meeting a potato podcaster for years. Could this mean we should all throw a wrench or a potato into our travel tales to lighten up the mood? Maybe leaving folks with a lasting chuckle is the best passport stamp you could ask for. What's better than crossing borders with laughter, right? Let's not forget the power of a good giggle, even when it makes you look like the world's most tech-savvy spud slinger.
Couldn't agree more, Simon. Laughter bridges gaps you didn't even know were there. It's like the universal password to genuine connections. Better to be remembered as the potato podcaster than not at all.
You've nailed it, Joe. Laughter is truly universal. Did you know it's one of the few things that's common in every human culture? It builds bonds, diffuses tension. Heck, it even has health benefits. When we laugh, our stress hormones drop and feel-good chemicals flood our systems. Plus, shared laughter can promote group cohesion. Even studies suggest that having a good chuckle can make us more open to new experiences, which is perfect when you're leapfrogging from country to country. And let's talk checkpoint history. These border stops are ancient. They started out simple, just a flag or a stone marking where one territory ends and another begins. And look at them now, technological fortresses. But despite all the scanners and screens, it's still humans meeting humans. I mean, who would have guessed that amidst all this boundary business, there's space for some knee slapping? Shows how staying lighthearted in line could turn a potential groan fest into an episode of Whose Line Is It Anyway?
Absolutely, Simon. These checkpoints are steeped in history, echoes of the past melding with modern tech, an inner space of old meets new. It's fascinating how such a serious threshold guarding nations can still be a theater stage for those shared human moments. We've advanced so far with technology, but those shared chuckles at a border control, that's civilization at its most basic, isn't it? Humans just trying to make the best out of a potentially stressful situation through humor. Sure, they're there for safety and regulation, but even walls and regulations can't cork the contagiousness of laughter. Next time you're stuck at a border, maybe try cracking a joke, sensitive to context and place, of course. Who knows, it might just be the story you dine out on for years to come.
But hold the phone, Joe. It's not all smiles and sunshine in checkpoint land. Let's dish out our best advice for navigating these places with humor without landing in hot water. I mean, you've got to read the room. Some guards might welcome a laugh, but others, they're like the human version of access denied. And here's my twist. Ever thought that maybe the border agents are the ones enduring the comedy routine? Day in and day out, they watch this parade of quirky travelers, each with their own oddball idea of being comedic. Whilst we're sweating bullets, hoping our jokes don't bomb, they're probably holding back eye rolls or snickers, thinking, oh boy, here comes another one. Let's flip it. Imagine if we were on the other side of the glass, Joe. Dealing with jet-lagged jesters trying to lighten the mood with a pun as fresh as their passport photo. How would we deal with the international circus coming through while keeping a straight face and security tight?
Imagine that. You're right. Guards must have an internal blooper reel worth its weight in confiscated contraband. If I were in their boots, dealing with the full human comedy, I think it'd be like an improv class with really high stakes. You gotta keep your cool, but also roll with the punches, or punchlines. It's a delicate dance between authority and humanity. And hey, jet-lagged jesters, isn't that just begging to be our next podcast series?
Absolutely. Jet-lagged jesters it is. But here's a curveball for you, Joe. Let's shift gears from the theatrics at borders to something more sobering. How these physical lines we draw can cement socioeconomic divides as clear as fences. Borders don't just outline countries, they can also reinforce stark contrast in wealth, health, and opportunities between neighbors. Take a glance at any two sides of a boundary, and the differences can be night and day. What are your thoughts on how these drawn lines reflect deeper societal chasms?
That's a tough one, but hitting the nail on the head, Simon. Artificial lines etched into maps, do they shape more than just boundaries? Do they propagate inequality? I might ask, how much do these borders actually restrict not just people, but ideas and resources that could balance those socioeconomic scales? And are there any models out there where nations have successfully managed to share the wealth despite these divisions?
Well, Joe, consider this. Borders can act as necessary firewalls, holding back economic meltdowns or containing health crises. They're not inherently divisive. Think about controlled trade. Countries protect local industries and jobs by regulating what crosses into their turf. Take the European Union. Sure, there's free movement, but even there, borders can sort of fine-tune economies to work together instead of being bulldozed by a free-for-all. Maybe it's less about tearing down boundaries and more about making them smart. Why? Think safety nets. When a country hits rough times, borders help other nations stay stable and send aid effectively. Without some controls, a crisis could ripple out unhindered. Inequality? Yeah, it's real, but no border is to blame. It's policies. Maybe it's on us to elect leaders who will use those lines to our advantage, creating bridges rather than barriers. So, how do we figure out the balance here? It's one epic seesaw battle between shared wealth and protecting your own backyard.
Smart borders. That's an interesting take. These lines we draw, sure, they're protective, but can be porous in positive ways, like cultural exchange and mutual aid in crises. Elect leaders who see borders as bridges. You've got a point there, Simon. But here's the thing. Policies reflecting our shared humanity are crucial. These socioeconomic divides won't fix themselves just by playing nice with trade laws or aid packages. It's also about grassroots efforts, community outreach that leaps over fences and walls to extend a hand. We need to amplify voices from both sides, showcasing how similar our hopes and struggles really are. When it comes down to it, fortifying fences or opening gates, it's what happens at the human level that determines whether these borders become canyons or just lines on a map.
For sure, that human level is what counts. But let's poke at that community outreach thing a bit more. It's great in theory, right? Yet here's the deal. Can these initiatives actually scale up to make a dent against the government scale problems we're seeing? Grassroots efforts are often like David with his slingshot facing Goliath. Meaningful, yes, but will they topple the towering issues? What about ingrained systems that have decades or centuries head start on any well-meaning group? We've got to dig deeper than just feel-good vibes and passing out handshakes across fences. We also can't ignore that sometimes opening gates wide can invite issues that not everyone's ready to handle. I mean, there's cultural preservation, resource strain, economic impacts. So while we're tearing down some walls, we need to maybe build new, smarter ones elsewhere. What we're really dancing around here, Joe, is a balancing act. It's like trying to solve a Rubik's Cube while riding a unicycle. Doable, but crazy difficult. How does humanity juggle global unity without tossing stability out the window? Now that's the million-dollar question, ain't it?
Rubik's Cube on a unicycle? Well, precisely. Tackling these issues is like trying to juggle while blindfolded. There's bound to be a few drop balls. Countries have got to be acrobats, flexible yet precise.
Ha! Acrobats indeed. Listen to this, Joe. When I was a kid, there was this old tree that marked the edge of our property, our own little border. Now on one side, lush grass from my dad's hard work. On the other, it's kind of barren because Mr. Jenkins, our neighbor, believed nature should do its thing with no help. Here's where it gets good. One summer, that tree got sick, and guess what? The disease didn't care about property lines. It spread everywhere. My dad and Mr. Jenkins had to team up to save both sides. It's like they forgot there ever was a line in the dirt. They worked together, and boom, the grass got greener on both sides. It's a small-scale example, but it mirrors big-time border dynamics. Shows what can happen when barriers become meeting places instead of dividers, even if it's just two fellas worried about their lawn.
That's a great anecdote, Simon. It perfectly illustrates what environmental challenges can teach us about cooperation across boundaries. Let's consider ecological issues like water rights, pollution, and deforestation, all of which ignore man-made borders. Rivers cross countries, air currents spread pollution globally. One nation's deforestation can impact a neighbor's rainfall patterns. These transboundary problems require cross-border solutions, fostering collaboration that goes beyond mere diplomacy. In fact, they necessitate it for mutual survival. Look at the Danube River in Europe, involving over a dozen countries in its basin cooperating on water quality and flood control. Ensuring the ecosystem thrives benefits everyone involved, economically and environmentally. Or take diseases. They don't need passports. Global health initiatives illustrate how treating illness in one area improves global health security. For instance, polio eradication efforts don't just protect children in areas where the disease is prevalent. They prevent its potential spread elsewhere. Humanity's common threats remind us that socioeconomic divides are secondary to our shared destinies. Healthier, sustainable practices anywhere uplift everyone everywhere. It's the ultimate realization. We're only as strong as our weakest link, and sometimes that means forgetting the fence and working together.
And on that note of forgetting the fence and working together, we've got to wrap up today's show. Huge thanks to all you awesome listeners out there for tuning in. Remember, this is a daily thing, so make sure you come back tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern for another dive into the deep end with us. Keep laughing, keep challenging those borders in your mind, and who knows what stories you'll have by then. This is Simon and my partner in podcasting crime, Joe, signing off. Catch you on the flip side.
Hey, don't forget to hit subscribe. And if borders don't trap your thoughts, wait till you hear about Seeds Without Borders, startup incubators going global. Catch that tomorrow at 5 p.m. Trust me, you'll want to tune in.
And hey, if your mind's flipping over borders, these global incubators are like Olympic gymnasts. The way they're vaulting ideas across the globe, pure gold medal stuff. Tune in and find out how minds without limits are shaping our world's future. one startup somersault at a time. See you then.